it's not you. It's me. Today, I am going to tell you a story. This is a true story. It happens every day, and it is a very sad and disturbing story. But you do need to hear this story so that it doesn't happen to you. And the story goes something like this. Someone innocently asks for a radio check with their new radio. You can hear the excitement in their voice as they say those words. Radio check, please. Now this is where the story takes an ugly turn. If you're squeamish or are prone to fits of rage, you may want to turn away. Their signal on their new radio is strong, 9 out of 10 bars. They have a great, strong signal, but we can't hear them. We can't hear what they're saying. Their volume is low. They have very poor modulation. Then, just when you think it could not get any worse, the story takes an even uglier turn. Someone responds to their radio check, obviously an expert, and says, "Your signal is low. Maybe your SWR is too high, or maybe you need to raise your antenna up to make your signal better." That expert just committed the radio version of leaving a stupid comment on YouTube. My friend, notice I said friend because I'm talking to you, my favorite viewer, signal strength and volume are not the same. They are two very different things. Now, to tell the difference between signal strength and volume, some people use very expensive machines and hardware with flashy lights and knobs and data readouts. But the truth is that any 6-year-old with at least one functioning ear can easily tell the difference between volume and strength without the need to overcompensate for anything with a bunch of expensive equipment. Allow me to demonstrate using this new Wuxin Ocean KG916 GMRS radio. You can't buy one of these yet, and my NDA doesn't allow me to say anything about the new KG916 GMRS radio, but the NDA didn't say anything about showing it. So to help you understand the difference between signal strength and volume, I'm going to ask my friend Chris, who is the real star of this YouTube channel. I'm going to ask him to help demonstrate the difference between volume and signal strength. Chris, would you give us an example of a strong signal and good volume?
Yes, sir. This is Chris. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Strong signal, very little static, good modulation. That's how a radio should sound. Now, Chris, can you give us an example of a weaker signal?
Yes, sir. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I could hear him, but there was much more static. That is a weaker signal. A weak signal can be cured by a bigger antenna or more power. There's several ways to cure a weak signal. If the SWR is extremely high, say 10.1 to 1, then fixing that would help. For some reason, many of the experts seem to think that if you have an SWR of, say, 2 to 1, that fixing that SWR, changing that SWR, getting that SW down from 2 to 1 to 1.5 to 1, those experts seem to think that making that small change will magically fix a weak signal. It would make the signal better, but your human ears would never hear the difference between a moderately high SWR, like say 2 to 1 and 1.5 to 1. Your ears would never know the difference. Now let's hear a strong signal, but with low volume. Chris, can you demonstrate a strong signal with a low volume? Did you hear that? Hardly any static, a good, strong signal, but his volume, his voice, the tiny, crisp voice was very low. I could hardly hear what he was saying, even though the signal strength was very strong. And all of the SWR tuning, bigger antennas, higher antennas, better cable, more power, none of that will fix his low volume because his signal was already strong. All of those things affect signal, They do not affect the volume of his voice. And this is where many of the experts seem to get much confused. And the reason that his volume, his modulation was low, even though he had that strong signal, the reason for the low volume is probably because he was doing it wrong. The most common reason for low volume is poor microphone technique. Allow me to demonstrate. Hello, radio check, radio check. This is wrong. The microphone is way over there at a full arm's length. That is wrong. Never do that. Hello, radio check. This, for most radios, is also wrong. For most radios, this is right. A couple of inches from the noise hole, maybe a little further, maybe a little closer. It depends on the radio. Either straight in. Sometimes some radios and microphones work better slightly off, but you want this general distance from the noise hole. It may be that he was just talking too quietly. He may have been holding the microphone at the proper distance, but just whispering and not talking very loudly. When you talk on a radio, you need to enunciate. You want to talk at a normal room volume level. Don't scream, but don't whisper. If you are a low talker is someone who speaks normally until they get within about 5 feet of any two-way radio, and then they suddenly start to whisper. If you have LTS, low talker syndrome, you will either need to learn how to talk right or hold the mic even closer to your mouth. The volume may have been low because he was transmitting in narrow band. Narrow band. He may have been holding the mic close. He may have been screaming into the microphone, but if the radio is transmitting at narrow band, the volume would be very low. GMRS radios normally operate at wide band. Some can be set to narrow band or wide band, so you want to make sure that your radio is set to wide band. If your radio only transmits in narrow band, there is a very easy fix for that. You take your radio and you throw it in the trash. The volume might have been too low because the microphone gain was set too low. Most GMRS radios do not have an adjustable microphone gain, but if your radio does have an adjustable microphone gain, you want to make sure it is up high enough. To find out if your radio has an adjustable microphone gain and find out how to adjust it, read the fucking manual. The volume may have been too low because the noise hole on the radio may be too small. Many people don't realize that the microphone, the actual noise hole on the radio, is usually very small. You can maybe see it. It's right there on the radio. It is a tiny little hole. It is not. This is the speaker. Most radios have a large speaker grill, but a very tiny microphone hole. If this is the case with your radio, you may need to compensate by speaking extra loud or holding it a little closer than is normally recommended. Some people have even resorted to drilling out the plastic in the case to make the noise hole bigger. If your radio is a waterproof radio, that may also make your volume low, meaning you would have to compensate by speaking louder or holding the radio closer to your noise hole. This is because the same magic that keeps the water from getting inside of a radio often also keeps your voice from getting inside of the radio. So if you have a fancy waterproof radio with a low volume, louder and closer is better. The volume may be too low because you just have a shitty radio. And in that case, something like this would fix it. Now that you understand the differences between signal strength and volume, go forth and spread the word.